Hello. Today is Friday, February 20th, forever to be known as Tariff Friday or Non-Tariff Friday, as it may be. I'm Cindy Allen. I'm CEO of Trade Force Multiplier, which is a global trade consultancy service. We handle matters from high-level strategy to the more technical, hands-on work like classification and risk reviews. Welcome to Simply Trade, Cindy's version, where I base an international trade update on a Taylor Swift song. Today's podcast is brought to you in association with Global Trading Center. Today's song is Opalite, and we'll get into that in a moment. But first, what happened this past week in trade? Well, we're still awaiting decisions on or details on the Taiwan 15% or MFN, most favored nation, whichever is higher. We're still waiting on details for the India IEEPA reciprocal duties from 25 to 18. We are still waiting on details for Guatemala, El Salvador, Argentina agreements. And this morning it was announced that there's a new agreement with Indonesia that has a 19% tariff rate with a textile tariff rate quota. So for some textiles, it will come in at a certain volume or value. We aren't sure yet which would apply of those textiles duty free. There is no new movement on the Hill on the elimination of first sale. We haven't seen any additional movement on that now that the House has passed that. Or ending IEEPA on Canada. No new movement on that, but that may be a moot point, as I will discuss in a moment. Manufacturing is down in the U.S. There's been some leading indicators that were published this week that indicated that. However, the stock market is up, signaling somewhat of a disconnect on that. So we'll watch with the decision that has come out this morning, which I'll get to in a moment, if that has an effect on manufacturing in the U.S. or if that will signal even higher performance on the stock market. Why did I choose the song Opalite for today's song? It's because of the lyrics. It's all right. You were dancing through the lightning strikes, sleepless in the onyx night, but now the sky is opalite. The Supreme Court has issued their decision on the IEEPA tariffs. It was a 6-3 opinion. There's 170 pages to read through. But the summary is it was a very narrow decision with precise impacts. The finding was that IEEPA does not authorize the president to impose tariffs. The term regulate does not really mean or include the ability to tax or tariff goods. There are, as the decision called out, 9 action verbs in IEEPA that outline specific authorities. And none of those authorities included the ability to raise revenue or tax U.S. consumers. The finding is that Congress alone has the power to levy tax and tariffs. Specific authorities were delegated by Congress with controls, and that's how we have Section 201 or 301, Section 232, and also Section 122 and Section 338, which have not yet been used by this administration. But each of these authorities have specific timelines and guidelines that the administration must file. It has limitations outlined by Congress. And they indicated that because these specific authorities were given, there's not a more broad authority to levy tax and tariffs through IEEPA. And also another finding was that during peacetime, the president does not have the authority to issue tariffs or taxes. So during peacetime, which we're in now, it did not address the definition of emergency, which is what the administration used to override the peacetime authority in IEEPA. And so we know that right now we are awaiting specific instructions. The decision remanded this back to the lower court, in this case, likely the Court of International Trade or the CIT, who will have to issue instructions to CBP. We do not expect CBP to come out with instructions on their own without really understanding the decision by the CIT. So what happens next? What is unknown? Will the administration move forward with 122 or a 338 action? Jameson Greer, who is the U.S. Trade Representative, has indicated previously that they are ready and poised to move forward with that. And Howard Lutnick has made similar comments in the past. So we'll look to see if 122 or 338 actions are increased or come out in this administration. Some opinions in the court ruling did seem to call in question that the administration can use other authorities as a stopgap measure overall as broadly as the IEEPA, but that's really unknown how that would be interpreted or move forward. Some technical questions, how will importers get their money back? What is the process to be used? Will it be protests? Will it be post-summary corrections? Will there be an automated renewal process? Automated refund process that the CBP will just automatically issue refunds. When will this take effect? We don't know. When will the CIT have to issue instructions to CIP? Will CBP have to issue instructions? What does that look like going back? And will de minimis be affected? Because de minimis was paused as a result of the powers under IEEPA. However, the summary ruling did not address it, although I understand, and I have not read this, that there may be references to it in the individual opinions issued by the court justices. So right now, a big question, do importers have to pay duty on imports already arrived in the United States but not yet paid? And my recommendation is that if you do not pay the duty, it might be problematic. It might be considered an unpaid entry because those duties were in effect at the time the goods arrived into the United States, especially if you're looking at a monthly payment. So importers can issue their payments to CBP on a monthly basis for imports in the prior month, kind of like how a credit card works. That statement is due. And I would recommend that you pay that in absence of additional instructions from CBP. And also, some have questioned, can we stop payment right now for shipments we haven't yet paid or shipments that haven't yet arrived? When can we stop paying the IEEPA duties? We don't know yet. We don't have specific information from CBP to yet determine how best to move forward. So my personal Cindy Allen recommendation as the Taylor Swift of Trade is to continue to pay those. Wait for further clarification, either from the Court of International Trade or from CBP, to move forward on that before you make drastic decisions. As well, CBP is going to have to make changes to their system to allow for the non-payment of duty. If you recall, CBP just put in some edit checks to make sure that the right amount and the appropriate duties are paid on articles. So they might have to reverse some of those edit checks that they just put in. They'll definitely have to invalidate the IEEPA tariff numbers. They'll have to look at the relationship between IEEPA and some of the other trade agreements. They'll have to determine what programming changes are made based on what the court comes out and instructs CBP to do. So it may take some time. So importers, the bad news is that you still may have to pay the duties in the interim. We also do not know if some of these trade agreements that have been signed are going to hold up. Now, many of the legal minds are saying, yes, they're legal agreements. They've signed by the governments. They're agreements moving forward. But many of the justifications were to keep it at the IEEPA rates. What we don't know is if the language in those agreements actually indicate that it's predicated on the IEEPA duty rates, or if it's a more general type of language that would allow the U.S. government to continue to assess those duties against those different we're going to have to look at that. And the court will likely have to look at that. And CBP will likely have to look at that. Also, some of the 232 actions are somewhat tied to the IEEPA actions. How are those going to be changed now that IEEPA has not found to be lawful moving forward? All of those are very complex questions, and we do think it's going to take some time for those to come out. As well, the programming is going to have to be changed to make sure that all the brokers are getting it right. So if you're a customs broker out there, we're going to have to continue on as is until we get further instructions. If you're an importer out there, you're going to have to pay the duty and work with your customs broker to make sure that you are continuing to do that until we get further instructions. And then when further instructions on how to get refunds are issued, work with your customs brokers. We know it's likely going to require some sort of of process, some sort of request for a refund. I don't think CBP is prepared to just automatically issue refunds on the millions of entries that it has collected it on. We don't know how that's going to work. We think it's likely that there is going to have to be an action taken, and that action taken will likely have to be by a customs broker so that the record in ACE is actually updated for all of these entries and accurately reflecting the refund amount that will be due on each of these entries. We also don't know how long that will take to get those refunds. We do know it's electronic though, so that's a good problem to have, is we know it's coming directly via ACH payments into the bank accounts due to the electronic refund ruling or a decision by CBP and rollout of technology. So lots we don't know. We do know the decision now that IEEPA is considered unlawful for tariff purposes. We understand why. We don't know how current shipments are going to be affected yet. We don't know how refunds are going to be issued. We don't know if de minimis is impacted. So stay tuned, but I do know it seems like we're seeing a little bit of sun, so the sky really is opalite now. We'll talk to you next week.